pay no attention to the TV being rolled out behind me here. But this morning, I'm excited for this conversation we get to have thinking about doubt. And I realized I had my first experience doubting God that I can remember, at least, as a third grader here on this campus. And so I was in school at Tamura at the time, and my mom worked on staff here as one of our pastors. And so the Wave, or at the time, Valley Day, they would walk me across the field over here and drop me off at my mom's office. And I remember kind of walking across the patio, and turning the corner around the youth building right there to head to my mom's office, and a thought popped into my head. And that thought was, what if God was really Satan and Satan was really God? Okay? Just like a flash in that moment. That's what being a philosopher's son does to you, right? As a third grader. And so I remember the thought popping into my head and thinking, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to respond to that. I don't know how to manage that. It was just a flash of doubt. And this morning, what I want us to do is I want us to think about the resurrected life. But as we think about the resurrected life, I want us to think about doubt and the deepening of our faith. I want us to think about the way that we're going to see that the resurrected life isn't a straight line. It's not a straight line of faith, always being that tomorrow is a better day of faith than the one that came before it. It's not a straight line. And that's okay. In fact, I might even be so bold as to say it's actually good for us that it's not. But first, before we dive into it, we have to define doubt first and foremost, because when we talk about doubt in a faith context, in a Christian context, it can be a loaded word for us, right? But doubt is simply a lack of conviction, okay? It's a lack of conviction about something. Right? Like, I doubt that you can make a half-court shot. That's me, I lack conviction that you can do it. I doubt that you can throw a football over those mountains, right? I lack conviction that you can do it. I doubt that my minivan would be, a good idea to drive across the country or something, right? I lack conviction about it. But they're not certainties. Right? Doubt is a lack of certainty, a lack of conviction in this way. And sometimes what we do when we think about faith is we picture doubt and faith as a binary, right? Like 0 is doubt and 1 is faith, and that's just how it goes. And yeah, I think it's inaccurate. What I want us to see this morning as we think about doubt is to understand doubt, that doubt kind of lands in the middle between 0 and 100. Right? You'll notice that someone who's at a 0 of faith is just as certain as someone who's at a 100 of faith. The certainty lives on both ends. Doubt finds itself living in the middle. Doubt finds itself somewhere between these 2 points. And this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the story of Thomas and his moment of being stuck somewhere between 0 and 100. If you want, you can open up with me to John chapter 20. We're going to be in verse 24 here in a second. And we're going to see Thomas in this moment of doubt. And then we're going to see Jesus meet Thomas in his doubt and his confusion and his wonder. And so this is what it says. John chapter 20, starting in verse 24. It says, "Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, which I just learned, sadly, at 30 years old," thanks, Ron, for not teaching me in Sunday school. Thomas is just the Aramaic word for twin, and Didymus is the Greek word for twin. So we're just getting his name. He just has a nickname. He doesn't get a real name. Twin here. Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my fingers where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." And Thomas goes on, we see through a few more of the resurrection accounts, Thomas sees the resurrected Jesus a few more times with the other disciples. His resurrected life continues on. We know from church tradition, from church history, that really isn't much disputed, that Thomas was sent in as a missionary into Parthia. So that was mostly modern day Iran. And he followed through along the coast, then down through India, where he was martyred ultimately in this province known as Tamil Nadu, which is the southernmost province in India. And all throughout the way, Thomas founded churches throughout Parthia, throughout India. And there's actually groups of Christians in India today who consider themselves Thomas Christians, who track their lineage to Thomas, to the churches that Thomas founded 2,000 years ago. And so we can look at Thomas's story. This story it's an incredible story, and it's easy for us, I think, because it's a beautiful way of telling it, to tell the story as a straight line. We can say that Thomas, in John 20, Thomas doubted, and then Thomas saw the resurrected Jesus, and then Thomas's life from that point on was dedicated perfectly to the life of following Jesus, right? He was absolutely confident of Jesus from this point on all the way up to his martyrdom, however many years later. And yet I think that would be a mistake for us, right? Because the resurrected life, it's not a straight line. It's not this perfectly straight line. And what we have to see this morning, I think, is that Thomas's story doesn't start with doubt here in John 20. Thomas's story started all the way back in Mark chapter 3 with his calling. And we're going to map out here in a second kind of the story of Thomas's resurrected life. And we'll see here in Mark 3, verse 13, it starts with calling. It says, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he appointed, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John. To them he gave the names Boanerges, which means sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Right, we see in this moment, Jesus went up on a mountain and he called Thomas to him. He called the 12 to him. He called Thomas as one of them, and he chose Thomas. He chose Thomas in this moment, and the resurrected life always starts with calling. It always starts with calling. Thomas's resurrected life didn't start on his own initiative. Right? Thomas's resurrected life started on Jesus' initiative. Jesus called him. He didn't will himself into being a follower of Jesus. Jesus invited him into this life. Jesus called him into this moment. And there was no resurrected life for Thomas before Jesus called him. But after Jesus called him, what we see is that Thomas entered into a season of confidence. This is kind of the next stage in the resurrected life. He entered into a season of confidence. And we see this story in John chapter 11. And it's one of my favorite stories. And, one of the most famous stories of Scripture is the story of Lazarus. And we see in John 11 this moment where Thomas exhibited his confidence. Right? This is what it says starting in verse 5. It says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed there where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, 'Let us go back to Judea.' But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews were there tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant a natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. Right, here's Thomas's moment. How unfair is this for Thomas? That in this moment, all the other disciples are afraid. All the other disciples are scared. They're saying, Jesus, they just tried to kill us there. If we go back there, we're absolutely going to be killed. And Thomas is the one who speaks up and says, you know what? If Jesus is going, let us go so we can die with him, okay? And then Thomas has one moment in John 20 where he doubts, and we remember him for eternity as doubting Thomas, right? Like he has this incredible moment in John 11. Absolute confidence in Jesus. If Jesus is going to go to Judea and he's going to die, let us go with him. Let us die with him. He's absolutely confident. He's absolutely sure in this moment. See, the resurrected life enjoys seasons of confidence. Thomas's resurrected life had these moments, at least one here that we see plainly in John 11, right? He was absolutely confident in this moment. And this wasn't even a hypothetical offer, right? I could imagine someone saying, you know what, I'll go with you, Jesus, thinking Jesus wouldn't actually go. But in this case, he went. And we know Thomas went with him. Jesus went to Mary and Martha. He went and he raised Lazarus from the dead. And Thomas was there, braving death alongside of him. Thomas had confidence in this season. And then he hit a wall of his faith. And let's not sell this short for a second, okay? Let's not sell short this wall that Thomas ran into, because Jesus was arrested in front of Thomas. He was taken to be crucified. He was buried. Thomas would have heard the account of what had happened. This is a pretty significant wall in someone's life. This is a pretty significant moment where you could imagine someone's faith being challenged in profound ways. Right? He'd been so ready to die with Jesus, but he wasn't ready to live without Jesus. He didn't know what to do now. That was a bridge too far for him. That was a bridge too far for his faith. He couldn't get past it. And we don't know why Thomas wasn't with the other disciples at the start of John 20. We don't know what he was doing. We often attribute it to fear, to worry, to anxiety, that Thomas, rightfully, I think, in a lot of ways, would have thought, what's the point? Why should we all get together in this upper room? Jesus is dead. All we're doing is gathering up so the Romans can arrest us and execute us too. So he's not there. He's off doing something else. Because for Thomas, the death of Jesus was a wall to his faith, a wall for his resurrected life. He didn't know how to get past it. And after he hit the wall, what happened is that he entered into a period of doubt. He entered into a period of doubt in the cycle. We don't like it, but the resurrected life faces periods of doubt. It faces real periods of doubt, and Thomas found himself in the middle of this period of doubt, and Jesus met him there. So what makes John 20 such an incredible story is that Jesus met him there in the midst of his doubt. Right? It says in verse 26, a week later his disciples were in the house again and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Thinking about that moment, Thomas was in a period of doubt and Jesus met him there. Jesus embraced him there. And it's in this moment that we see Thomas experienced a deepening of his faith. He saw Jesus for the first time really before him for who he truly was, and he entered into this next phase, a deepening of his faith. To be able to declare, "My Lord and my God," he saw Jesus right in front of him. This right here is the resurrected life. This is what the resurrected life looks like. It's not a straight line where every day is better than the last. It's a cycle. A cycle started by our moment of calling and carried forward by seasons of confidence. It's a cycle challenged eventually by a wall in each of our lives that leads us into a period of doubt that eventually, if we're able to, will lead us into a refreshing, a deepening of our faith. And it's not just Thomas's resurrected life, right? Thomas's follows this model, but so does each of ours. For each of us, this is what our resurrected life looks like. Every one of our resurrected lives started with God calling us to him. No one is here today because they willed themselves into this relationship with God. He has invited each of us, called each of us, chosen each of us to follow after him. That's the beauty of this call. And every one of us, if we're here and we've said yes to following Jesus, we've said yes to this moment of calling. Maybe for you, it was when you were 4 years old. Maybe for you, it was when you were 40 years old. But we're all here because we've said yes to Jesus. Because we've said yes to this call on our lives. And for many of us, I think, honestly, probably all of us, we've followed up this calling with a season of confidence. That after this calling, we entered into a season of confidence. And it's a great place to be. Okay, it's an awesome place to be. It feels great to be confident. It feels reassuring to be confident. It feels safe and secure to be confident. We love this season. We love this season of our faith. And maybe for you, it was the faith of your childhood when everything was just Jesus and it was so black and white and easy to see. Maybe for you, it was the faith of your adolescence when you experienced God at a camp or at a retreat, whatever it might have been. And it felt like everything in your life had suddenly changed. Maybe for you, it's your faith right now. You're in this season of confidence, new rhythms, new routines. You're experiencing God in a new way. It gives you the confidence that Thomas had. And we should treasure these seasons. When we get these seasons of confidence, we should treasure them. We should hold on to them. We should celebrate them. When I can look back at my own resurrected life, my own life of faith, I can see different seasons of confidence. When I felt called by God into ministry as a high school student at a summer camp, I felt confident. Okay, when I started this job here a little over 7 years ago, I felt absolutely confident, okay? I woke up, thought about Jesus, went to bed thinking about Jesus. I looked at the so-called narrow road and I thought, it's a mile wide. How does everyone not see this, right? I was absolutely confident about Jesus and in this life. We can look back on these seasons and we should be thankful for them. We celebrate them. We hold on to them, in part because they're important memories for us to have when we end up hitting a wall in our faith. When we end up hitting a wall in our faith, in our lives at some point after that confidence. Because we all do. We all will. And it's going to look different for each of us. The wall will look different for each of us. The wall could be burnout from overworking. The wall could be spiritual burnout from constantly pouring out of an empty cup. The wall could be a moral failing. The wall could be a personal crisis, a faith crisis, an endless phase of spiritual dryness. Whatever it looks like, it could be different for all of us. But the reality is we all will hit a wall eventually. Thomas's wall was obvious, right? Thomas's wall was that his rabbi, his Messiah, was arrested and executed. That's a pretty significant challenge to Thomas's faith. For me, it's been a series of different things, of personal crises, especially for me as I started college. The wall became my mental health. It became my anxiety, my depression. And I don't know why in that moment, in that time, that became a wall in my faith, but it did. And it didn't take long after hitting the wall to shift then into a period of doubt. Remember, doubt doesn't mean you're at zero, right? It just means you fall somewhere between certainty, somewhere less than 100%. And that period of doubt for each of us, it can be difficult. It can be disorienting, in fact. What happened to the faith of confidence? What happened to feeling safe and secure? What happened to the path looking so obvious before you? And more often than not, what happens when we get into this period of doubt is that all of a sudden we experience shame. Doubt brings shame with it. You look back from this period and you look back to your faith and confidence and you think, I feel shame because of where I'm at right now. You look at your peers, you look at your friends, you look at your family and you see their faith, and then you look at yours and you think, I feel this shame about being here in this period of doubt now, that I'm not where they are right now. And so what do? We hide it. Right? We hide this doubt. We hide this shame. We don't want to let anyone know about it, right? Because what would it mean for us if we told anyone how we felt? What would it mean for us if we admitted any of these things that we've been thinking or we've been feeling in this period of doubt? And Fuller Youth Institute and Fuller Seminary does a lot of research about young people and faith in general. And one of the incredible findings that they argue for in their book in one of their books is they say that doubt isn't toxic to faith, silence is. Right? Doubt isn't toxic to faith, silence is. And what they say is that when they study young adults who have maintained their faith or who've walked away from their faith, both express almost equal levels of doubt. But the ones who maintain their faith are the young adults who were able to express it at some point in time. And the ones who walk away from their faith are those who feel like they had nowhere they could share it. It's not doubt that is toxic to our faith, it's silence. It's not doubt that allows this toxicity to seep in, it's silence. And so when we allow shame of our doubt, this shame of our doubt to silence us, what ends up happening is we allow this toxicity to seep into our faith. And I think this is an important lesson for all of us this morning because, we might not be in a period of doubt right now. You or I might not be in a period of doubt right now, but we know people who are. Right? We know that we have people in our lives who are facing this period of doubt. Maybe it's our kids, our grandkids, maybe it's our friends, maybe it's the students we're supposed to be discipling. They're facing this period of doubt, and we don't know what to do about it. We don't know what to do for them. We don't know what to do in this moment as they're facing this doubt. And let me encourage you and say, that's okay. We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to know how to solve this doubt for them. But what we cannot do, what we absolutely cannot do, is encourage their silence. We cannot encourage people who are in this period of doubt to just be silent and get through it. Jesus didn't. Right? Jesus was compassionate with Thomas. He met Thomas in the midst of his doubt. He didn't punish Thomas for his doubt. In fact, he kind of does the opposite. He rewards Thomas for his doubt, right? Jesus, in this moment in John 20, appears to Thomas basically just for Thomas. The other 10 had already seen the resurrected Jesus. He comes back for Thomas. He invites him, put your hand in my wounds. See that I am real in front of you. He meets Thomas in the midst of his doubt. He's merciful to him. In the book of Jude, one of the reasons we named our son Jude is that in Jude 1:22, he says to his audience, be merciful to those who doubt. Be merciful to those who doubt. Right? Be merciful like Jesus. And I'm so thankful for the people in my life who have been merciful to me in my doubt. So thankful for my parents, my grandparents, my wife. I'm thankful for my professors, my pastors, my friends who have been merciful to me, the way Jesus has been merciful to me in my doubt. As a college student, I remember having the realization that my faith was built for a teenager and I wasn't a teenager anymore. And my faith wasn't entirely prepared for questions about how God could be good and allow me to suffer even in small ways. How could God be good and allow abject suffering in the world? How could any of this hold together? My faith wasn't prepared for a personal crisis that left me with more questions than I had answers to. But people were merciful with me. Jesus was merciful with me. And because of it, my faith deepened. I experienced a deepening of my faith in that moment, in that season. And it didn't go back. This is important to see. It didn't go back to the faith of my youth. I didn't just go back to the faith I had before. It was different. And in the cycle of the resurrected life, you don't just go back to the same place you'd been before. You go back to somewhere new. Jesus said in Luke, and no one pours new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the new wine will burst the skins. The wine will run out and the wineskins will be ruined. No new wine must be poured into new wineskins. See, it's a new faith. It's a new life. It's a new resurrected life. And for each of us, the cycle then is less of just a circle and almost like a spiral staircase. We go around again and again and again, confidence, we hit a wall, doubt, a deepening faith, confidence, we hit a wall, doubt, a deepening faith as we grow closer and closer and deeper into our relationship with Jesus. We don't go back to the same point, we go somewhere new. I know for myself, we were getting ready and the question I think is obvious then, where are you at in your resurrected life? Where are you at in your resurrected life right now? Are you being called for the first time? Are you in a season of confidence? Are you facing a wall in your life? Are you in a period of doubt? Are you in a moment of a deepening faith? Where are you at in your resurrected life? And I saw for myself thinking about, I think I'm in a season right now of a deepening faith. In the same way that I realized that in college my faith had been built for a teenager and I wasn't a teenager anymore, I've realized now my faith had been built for my young adulthood and I'm 30 years old now. I've got 2 kids now. It's different. And I've gotten to experience God in a new way because of it. There's new rhythms and new routines and new disciplines that at 22 I thought were extra credit and at 30 I realized might be worth something, right? And I've had a deepening of my relationship with God because of it into something new. It doesn't mean that my faith is better today than it was before. I think it's tempting for us to do a comparison game to say, well, my faith is better than it was, or even worse, we're all tempted to say my faith is better than someone else's, right? Because I've gone down the staircase, I've spiraled around the cycle 6 or 7 times, and you've only done it once, so my faith is better. I think the reality is we have to push against that. We can't allow ourselves to be comparing our faith to someone else's. And Jesus celebrates the childlike faith of the children who come to him. And so for each of us, the challenge is we're not going to go back there. We have to embrace the new thing that God has given us, that God is inviting us into. And we have to honor the season that we're in. And this is what I want to challenge you to do, is to honor the season that you are in right now. Whether that's a season of confidence, or that's a wall, or that's a period of doubt, or that's a moment of a deepening faith, honor that season. Teresa of Avila wrote a book called The Interior Castle, which I've plagiarized large portions of the sermon from. And she says, trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. If you're in a season of confidence, if you're facing a wall in your faith, if you're in a period of doubt, if you're in a moment of a deepening faith, trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Honor the season that you are in. Honor the season that you are in. Where are you at in your resurrected life? I know for some of you, you're going to say you're in a season of confidence right now, and I would encourage you, honor it by celebrating it. Be thankful for it. Embrace it. For others of you, you're facing a wall right now in your faith, and for you, I'm sorry that that's the position that you're in right now. But I challenge you, encourage you, embrace it. Turn to God in the midst of it. Turn to the people around you in the midst of it. For some of you, you're in a period of doubt. And I understand what that feels like. I understand that that is disorienting and confusing, and it feels insecure and frustrating. I encourage you, don't run from it. Don't be silenced by it. Don't try to avoid it. For others of you, you're in a moment of a deepening faith, a refreshing of your faith. And just as with confidence, I encourage you, celebrate it. Embrace this new faith. Honor the season that you are in right now. In a moment, the band is going to make their way back up, and we're going to sing one last song together. And as we do, I want to just encourage us, because I know for myself, it can feel like I have to get through the cycle of the resurrected life as fast as possible, right? I want to achieve, I want to accomplish, I want to get through this, especially in difficult seasons. Like God might only care for me when I'm in a deepening of my faith or in a moment of confidence. If I'm against the wall, if I'm in a period of doubt, I don't know what God thinks of me in those moments. And what I want to do is I want to encourage you, I want to challenge you to be reminded that God loves us through it all. That wherever we're at, what God invites us to do is to be honest about the season we're in, the same way Thomas was honest about the season he was in, the moment he was in. Be honest with God about it. Embrace the love that he offers us no matter where we are at in our resurrected lives. So let's take a moment. Let's worship God together.